the Daily Derech. We are walking the path of holiness.
Hello, everybody. This is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of Temple of Aaron exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, and the Rabbinical Assembly. Today is the first day after Shabbat Kodesh, the 8th of Sivan, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Sunday, May 24th, 2026. We will read Parashat Naso this coming Shabbat. Let's begin. Me'am Loez in the Parsha. We'll begin a new Parsha today, Parashat Naso, and this is the second Parsha of the book of Bamidbar. Basically, in the first Parsha of the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, we learned that the Jewish people went through a census. They were counted, and counted specifically by their groups. Towards the end of Parashat Bamidbar, though, we actually see the counting of the Levites. Oftentimes, the Levites were not counted as part of the rest of the Jewish people because they did not necessarily serve in the military. They would stay with the ritual items and continue doing the religious service to God. And also, they were also often not counted because their population wasn't used for giving out land in the land of Eretz Israel, because Levites didn't own land. They rather lived in different areas of Israel. So this is why the Levites were sort of kept separate. And so towards the end of the Parashat Bamidbar, we see that the Levi'im are actually split into three different groups, and this is of course split into groups based on the descendants of Levi, and so three different familial groups within the Levites, and that is Kehat, Gershon, and Merari. These three different groups all had three different jobs within the Mishkan, within the tabernacle, and they therefore are counted separately in three different groups. Today we're going to go through what these three different groups of Levi'im actually did within the Mishkan in terms of carrying the particular items. So first we'll go through Kehat. Kehat in some way is considered, in some ways the highest status Levite. Why? Because they were really responsible for carrying the actual ritual items of the tabernacle. For example, the shulchan, the table, the menorah, things like this that are the actual ritual-specific items. So Kehat carried these particular items. Then we have Gershon and Merari. Gershon and Merari really were responsible for carrying sort of everything else. Gershon, in particular, was really to carry the tapestries and the wall hangings, sort of what we would call the walls, the actual tapestries and structure of the tabernacle itself. And so they would carry these, the animal skins, everything like that, that sort of covered the tabernacle. That would actually give it its real visible structure. The Merari, on the other hand, would carry all what we would call today the nuts and bolts, the foundational parts of the actual Mishkan that keep it up. So, for example, pillars, hooks, nails, screws, things like this. That is what the Merari particularly held. So there is this sort of three-part division of carrying the ritual, the tabernacle, and all of the ritual items throughout the wilderness. And so this is kept, and this is a tradition that's narrated within the Tanakh itself, and it shows the different divisions that not all Levi'im were exactly the same. They all had different jobs, and therefore were counted in different ways, and that's why they're kept separately, as we see in our Parashat and Parashat Naso. We'll continue on tomorrow talking about other themes within Parashat Naso, but a lot of the first part, especially in the triennial cycle, since we're this year in many conservative congregations only reading the first part of Naso, of the three parts, is mostly dedicated to counting the Gershonim and the Merarim. The Kehat are counted at the end of Parashat Bamidbar in the previous Parsha. So if you're coming to shul to hear the Torah being read, this is mostly what you're going to hear if you go to a congregation that does the triennial reading. But in our next episodes, we'll try to go through a lot of the other mitzvot, the important mitzvot and important practices that are talked about through the rest of the Parsha of Naso. Mishneh Torah. We're going to begin a new section of the Mishneh Torah this week, and that is the laws of Talmud Torah, the laws of Torah study. We often don't see this in other codes as well, somewhat, not fully gone, but certainly there, but less in depth than the way Rambam goes into it here. And so these laws really become foundational of how each Jew should structure their Torah learning and what are our obligations in terms of really learning Torah. Remember, learning Torah is a mitzvah. It's not something we just do for fun or when we feel like it, but it should be kavua in our life. It should be fixed in our life. This is one of the reasons actually for creating the Daily Derech in the first place, is that everyone can access Torah in a relatively easy fashion on their own time, and that is explained at their level and gives them all of the necessary sources to live by a normative Jewish life. So I hope that our Daily Derech here fits into a lot of these categories we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. And I think these are really essential for us to take seriously in our day. It also, I find them to be, also very clarifying in terms of their guidance of what we should really be focusing on in teaching our children and teaching ourselves, of course. So chapter 1 begins by specifically who is not obligated in Torah study. And traditionally, these are women, slaves, and minors. All of these categories are in this category free from the obligation of Torah study because it is traditionally thought that women, slaves, and minors are not in charge of their own time. Rather, they each have a boss, they each have a supervisor who has control over their time. So they are not free to study whenever they want to or whenever they can. Rather, they have to follow the orders of their master. So obviously, for a slave, this is the slave owner. For a minor, this is a parent, right? And finally, women as well. Now, obviously, I think for us women, it's very different now, especially in conservative Judaism, where we're very much proud egalitarian Jews, where men and women are equal. I think we can understand clearly that now women are obligated in Torah study just like men are. Why? Because again, this law is based on the idea that men have real authority over their wives. This is not something we believe anymore or go by in any way, shape, or form. Men do not have more authority over their wives. Rather, it is an equal partnership of two people coming together with equal amounts of power. If that be the case, then that means that women are in charge of their own time, and therefore that also means that they are obligated in the learning of Torah. If you say that women are not obligated in the learning of Torah, you must therefore say that women are not in charge of their own time and are at the mercy and mastery of their husbands, which I hope no one says. Regardless, slaves, obviously, if one had a slave, they would be free from obligation of Torah study. I don't suggest that. Don't do that. But this is something that Jews used to have. And thank God we don't anymore. And finally, minors. It's not saying that minors should not study Torah, but rather they are not in charge of that obligation. They are not responsible for their own Torah learning when they are a minor. And by the way, what we mean by a minor here is below the age of 13, not 18, but below the age of Jewish adulthood, which is 13. So before their bar or bat mitzvah, they don't have an obligation in Torah study. So then you might say, well, what about this really important mitzvah to teach children, right? We know that teaching children Torah is really essential. I mean, it's in the Ve'ahavta. So whose obligation is it? Nevertheless, a father is obligated to teach his son Torah while he is a minor, as Deuteronomy states, and you shall teach them to your sons to speak about them. So we know, therefore, that a father is obligated to teach one's son Torah. So the obligation when a Jew is a minor below the age of bar or bat mitzvah, it is actually upon the obligation of traditionally their father to teach them Torah. Now, obviously, now it is both the obligation of the father and the mother, because the mother is also obligated to learn Torah, and therefore if she's obligated to learn Torah, she's also obligated to teach her children Torah. And so I would then say, as a conservative rabbi, that a father and a mother are both equally obligated in the obligation to teach their children Torah, and obviously not just their son Torah, but their daughter Torah well, because as we said, women also are going to need to learn Torah because they're going to be obligated after majority age. So I really think it's very, very fair to interpret this and traditional to interpret this in an egalitarian manner, just in terms of the way in which we think of women these days. Thank God. And so Maimonides, when he continues, this is a woman is not obligated to teach her son, but only those who are obligated to learn are obligated to teach. We have the answer. Now that we say that women are obligated to learn, therefore they're also obligated to teach. Menorat HaMaor. We're going to continue learning the introduction to the first candle in Menorat HaMaor. We've been learning from the Menorat HaMaor on Shavuot, but now that Shavuot is over, I miss Shavuot. We'll continue with the beginning of the Sefer, which is again at this point talking about trying to stay away and living a life without jealousy or envy, or chasing after kavod or lusts or passions. The Menorat HaMaor continues from where we left off. He says that anyone who has eyes to see, okay, should look upon people who are more pious than they are, who are poorer, who don't have the money or the resources they have, and is in some ways more humble and lower than they are. And they should look at them in a way that says, let his heart be comforted through them. That one should actually be comforted by seeing these people. Why? That thank God that you have bread, that you've been given even more to have than even other people who have to be pious. And again, this is all that by looking at other people, what actually happens? Is it cause jealousy? Does it say, oh, I wish I had more. I wish and show us what we lack? Or does it actually show us what we have, and it actually helps us and cultivates our heart to be grateful for the things that we actually do have in our life, although we can always, of course, have more. Hopefully, what the Menorat HaMaor is instructing us towards is to have gratitude towards what we have at the present moment. Very, very, very important, of course, in our lives. The Menorat HaMaor continues at this point to a connected idea here. And this is one of the things I love about the Menorat HaMaor, is that he always connects sort of these behavioristic behavior ideas of how we should behave when we're around other people, that we should also connect that into how we relate to Hashem and our faith. So he then continues with this little piece of Gemara here that says, and he should not say, what will I eat tomorrow? Rather, he should trust in his creator. And this is the idea that if you don't have, and this is really illustrated in Tractate Sota, Daf 48b, it was taught, Rabbi Eliezer says, whoever has bread in his basket and says, what will I eat tomorrow, is among those of little faith. What Rabbi Eliezer seems to be saying to us here is that if you have food in the present moment, at least for the day itself, then you should not spend all your day and worry too intensely about what you're going to eat tomorrow. Rather, every day is different, and that God will help us in each and every day. That doesn't mean you don't have to work hard. You should work hard and try to do the things that human beings need to do to gain food and resources in this world and make it a better place. But we shouldn't be overly anxious that we sort of have to create all of these opportunities. Sometimes and often we should have faith in God that God will bring us what we need. Now, this is, of course, based on the idea of the assumption that we have food at the present moment. If we don't have food at the present moment, it seems that Rabbi Eliezer would be suggesting, by way of what we would call in Hebrew a diuk, or looking at what he's saying very specifically, as this is specifically in the case of a person who already has bread in their basket. If a person doesn't have food at the present moment, they should not just sit there and say, well, God will do a miracle and bring me food and bread, but rather they need to work really, really hard to find bread and access the resources that they need. One should not just depend on God for this, but at least the bread for tomorrow and the food for tomorrow, understand that God will, if you act morally righteously in a good way, we should try to inculcate faith that God will give us what we need. The Menorat HaMaor then continues on this point and actually brings up a verse from Zechariah to connect this, from Zechariah 4:10, kind of a weird verse, for who has despised the day of small things, right? And this Zechariah really in its full context comes out of the idea who you might see a little bit of success, but that little bit of success will eventually become really big. So don't not take it seriously. If that makes any sense. And so that's the specific meaning of the pasuk itself. And he says, what caused the righteous to forfeit their table in the world to come? The smallness that was within them, that they did not fully trust in the Holy One, blessed be He. So Rabbi Lazar is really interpreting this to say, you could be righteous in all your ways, right? You can be moral, you can be ethical, you can be a good person, you could do all the right things. But if you don't actually have faith in Hashem, that God will give you what you need, and you think that it's fully dependent upon you to make everything happen in this world, you don't get to sit at the table in the world to come. And many of us, I think, relate to this because, like, you could say, oh, it's a small thing. I don't have this. Who can have faith in this world today? Who can really believe that God is going to give us the things that we need tomorrow? I have to do everything. And it sort of feels good in our ways to be self-dependent and to do all these things ourselves. But this is not the ideal, at least according to Rabbi Elazar here, is that we should also always inculcate within us something, a little bit of a small thing. It doesn't require huge resources. It doesn't require all these different actions and everything like this, but it's just a little bit of cultivation every day that God will give us the things we need in the future. So he then says, therefore, one should not become distressed over tomorrow, for he does not know what a day may bring. Very, very important. I think we all understand that. Clearly, might not be able to do it in our lives every day, but it is very, very important. And he then says, all the more so for a person who really does have what they need, who has resources and is not worried about tomorrow. How much more so do they need to be thankful for Hashem for all the good that God gives him? Lastly, the Menorat HaMaor says in this part that even if one does have all of their resources and is not worried about, what bread we're going to eat tomorrow, they should still not seek embroidered garments, silver vessels, or lavish feasts, which in our terms is like really luxurious goods. Right? They shouldn't live according with all their luxury goods, but rather should only spend money on things only that what is truly necessary for their livelihood, and nothing extra. And this is an important part, that just because we have the money doesn't mean we need to spend it on ourselves. Remember that if we have extra money, really this money should really be going to tzedakah, and to feed the poor and make sure that those who don't have the resources they need. That is actually a responsibility upon someone who has more money. We'll talk about that a little later. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.